Welcome to the Music Ed Matters podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Emily Williams Birch, and this podcast, it exists for you. Whether you're a music lover, an educator, a choir member, each week we bring guests to the show to help explore what matters in music. I'm so glad that you're here. Welcome to the show. Hello, and welcome to the Music Ed Matters podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Emily Williams Birch, and today, this is episode 90. Can you believe it? We're there already. And you're going to hear a recording from a session that Alex Gartner and I did at this past weekend's ACDA National Children's and Youth Community Choir Directors Retreat. Whew, that's a mouthful. Every 2 years, ACDA does a national retreat just for people that work with children's and youth choirs, whether that's in schools or churches or communities, and it is so much fun. But this year, Alex and I got to present, and we talked about communicating value, and I couldn't wait to record the session so that you could get to hear it too, because I know not everyone could be at that conference in Tucson, Arizona. So in this conversation with Alex, it isn't really a conversation because it's a presentation, we're going to talk about what does it mean to communicate our value as choir people. We have so many skills with communicating and leading and having vision for a season. How do we communicate that to everyone outside of our choir bubble? That's the best part of the Director's Retreat every 2 years. You don't have to explain yourself to anyone. Everyone just gets it. How can we take that same thing and translate it to the people outside of our choir bubble? You do great things. How do we take the skills we already have as educators and choral educators and translate that to build our support base? We're going to talk about that in this session, and I can't wait for you to hear it. This episode is brought to you by our friends at Kaleidoscope Adventures and the Kennison Choral Company. Obviously, this conference happened in Tucson, Arizona, so you know we all love to travel. If you're thinking about traveling in the future years or months, make sure you check out all the details in the episode notes below. All right, enough announcements. Episode 90, and communicating your value.
My name is Alex Gartner. I'm the Artistic and Executive Director of the Pensacola Children's Chorus in Pensacola, Florida. We average an enrollment of 300 singers a year and have an audience impact of between 25, and last year was 50,000 people for our virtual program. And Emmy can hopefully introduce her.
Hello, can you hear me okay? Can I see some type of wave in the room? Oh yes, thanks for the thumbs up. I'm in Savannah, Georgia, and I work with a variety of community choirs from middle school all the way through adults, and then I teach at a college in South Carolina, University of South Carolina of Aiken. But we're here to talk about communicating value, and I think what better way to start than to give you a song for your back pocket. You're gonna be my echo. It's gonna be like this. First time through, keep the beat on your shoulders, or your lap, or your head, your choice. Goes like this. A 1, 2. I'll keep the beat. Well, it's fine by me if you never leave. You can stay like this forever. It's fine by me. Put the beat someplace else. If you're super, super snatchy, you can lip sync along. And a 1, 2, Well, it's fine by me. If you never leave, you can stay like this forever. It's fine by me. Sing along. Well, it's fine by me. If you never leave, you can stay like this forever. It's fine by me. You sound awesome on the Zoom singing. Good job. Here's the next part. You have to count the fines with me. Fine, fine, fine. Never, never. Stay, 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 stay. Fine by me. Count with me again. Fine, fine, fine. Never, never. Stay, 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 stay. Fine by me. Here we go. Fine, fine, fine. Never, never. Stay, 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 stay. Fine by me. It's really fun to sing on Zoom. Even though it sounds real crazy, you sound great. There's one more part, and you have to be able to count. It goes, 1, 2. Well, it's fine by me. 1, 2. If you never leave, you can stay, you can stay, you can stay. It's fine by me. Count with me. And well, it's fine by me. Count again. If you never leave, this is short. You can stay, you can stay, you can stay. It's fine by me. Let's do it again. And well, it's fine by me. If you never leave, you can stay, you can stay, you can stay. It's fine by me. Now, I know I'm not there, so I have a YouTube video of my friend, Dr. Ashley Conway, who made a really fun round of this. You're going to sing a couple times. There's a YouTube video. I won't sing along because you'll hear the awesome sound over your stereo system. Pick one part, then pick another part. Here we go. We jump to the right spot. And get ready. Pick your favorite part.
Well, it's fine by me. If you never leave, you can stay forever. It's fine by me.
Pick a different part.
Well, it's fine by me. If you never leave, you can stay forever. It's fine by me.
Last time.
Well, it's fine by me. If you never leave, you can stay forever. It's fine by me.
How did we do? Did we get all the way through? Did it kind of work? Yay! Okay, cool. If nothing else, you now have a song in your back pocket that you can use on choir next time you have rehearsal. But I really do want to make a transfer with this song. Really important that we're able to communicate what it means to be fine. What does it really mean for your choir to be fine? Is it a certain number of singers? Is it a particular concert or event that you're performing? Is it a budget thing? What is your fine measurement? Alex, go for it.
Yes, so we are going to take just a little bit of time. We've all sung about it's fine by you. Now we need to figure out exactly what is fine by you. So take a moment. If you're a visual person like me, there's a handout in your packet that has pretty pictures on it of a diamond, and a barcode, and a bullseye. And take just some time to jot down a few things that make your choir fine. Or you can just jot them down in your head, and we will need some brave souls to share a few of those things.
Yeah, I want to hear what your measurement system is.
That's it.
Alex, what's your measurement of fine?
My measurement of fine, I have so many measurements of fine. My fine is that we kept singing, we never stopped. We found a way through COVID, that was a big fine for us in Pensacola. Our other find is that our donors came around us and supported us in ways that I never thought possible. So that was a fine thing. And we just have really supportive parents right now. They're really on board with what we're doing, and they are our advocates. So that makes us fine. I mean, what makes you fine?
We're fine because we have choirs that are singing. We're fine because we have choir tour on the schedule. We're fine because we're having fun. I think that's a really big measurement of what's fine. All right, can we hear some examples?
What makes you fine? Nothing. Absolutely nothing makes you fine. Sandy Thornton.
We are still building community.
Still building community. Sandy Miller.
That's what I was going to say. The kids are bonding together.
Excellent. Bonding together community. Dina.
We're finding performance opportunities that didn't happen prior to COVID. That's keeping us going even though we are much smaller than we have been. So
Still finding performance.
fine.
We're fine. Yes, Barbara.
We're fine because each week they're learning many new things.
Learning new things. Excellent. What makes you fine?
My families appreciate this more than they ever have.
So appreciative community, appreciative families. Yes. Any other things that make you fine?
Those are so positive and like uplifting. I love it. All right, here's the point of today. How do we communicate those things outside of our bubble? In this space where we are, we can talk about all this stuff and it is immediately understood because we're with all of our choir people. But let's say you want to communicate all those things you just said to some big person around town or some organization around town. In fact, let me introduce you to a guy from Pensacola because once you see this ad, you're going to want to get to know him so you can be in all of his ads. Here we go.
Who can get you excited? Hi, I'm Sandy Sansing. I'm excited because we've got over 2,000 new and used vehicles, more than any dealership on the Gulf Coast, over 10 great locations in Pensacola, Milton, Daphne, and Foley. Visit sandysansing.com or any of our great locations and you'll be excited too.
He sounds exciting. Alex, tell us about Sandy Sansing.
So let's talk about Sandy Sansing. Sandy Sansing, if you, was anybody been to Pensacola? Anybody? A few people? Cool. If you drive around Pensacola, you'll see him. It's a guarantee because he's everywhere. His face is everywhere. And if you use the name Sandy Sansing in Pensacola, someone will say, Sandy Sansing, man. It's just this ubiquitous little model that he has going through. We're on one of those commercials. I just couldn't find which one it was. But anyway, I want to talk about Sandy because Sandy, for about 15 years with the Pensacola Children's Chorus, Sandy funded a scholarship for our singers. He is really passionate about young people in our community. Through his 10 plus dealerships, he supports a lot of philanthropic causes. He is really big into sports. He's really big into charities that deal with child health. But he's also really big in now children's arts organizations, including the Pensacola Children's Chorus. So for 15 years, Sandy Sansing funded this scholarship for $500 for a singer whose family had significant financial needs. And for 15 years, that was really wonderful. And we really enjoyed it. We still give it out today. But in the last 5 years, Sandy has been giving between $10,000 and $15,000 a year to the Pensacola Children's Chorus. How did we get there? How did we get there? So we're going to talk through a few things today that will help you identify your Sandy. There are Sandys in your community. There are people that are not just as prominent or smiley as this guy. I will tell you, Sandy Sansing has no musical bone in his body. Zero. I play at the church that he goes to, and I see him standing there with the hymns just going the whole time. He's so grumpy when he's standing there, but he will talk for hours and hours about how much he loves the Pensacola Children's Chorus to anybody he finds. So how do we get there? How do we get there? And I have to forgive me, I'm not like reading out notes, but because I'm not doing a presentation on my notes on my presentation, so now
That's what I'm here for. You give me a job, Alex. It's very
important.
I
know. Thanks for the advice for that.
Just like every single song is different, and every choir that we represent in this room is different. Every supporter is different. So the goal for the day, you, my friends, are really smart people. You possess incredible skills. You know how to design a seasoned concert. You know how to lead a group of people and actually get something done. That's scary to others. You are very skilled. So we're going to take those skills that we have as choir directors and kind of shift them ever so slightly. In fact, we're going to leverage our skills as choir directors to communicate the value to those outside of our circle. When we can do that, we can bring them into our circle. It's about accessibility, conciseness, and clarity. Alex, I think you have a really good example in case they haven't got the message so far.
Two examples. One, Juliana, child, and I were talking yesterday. She works with me at Pensacola, and we were like, we were talking to Miguel, our newest assistant director, who's also here. And we're like, this conference is so great because we don't have to explain ourselves to anyone. I just came from the Florida Music Association conference, and people are like, so you do children's choir? How? So what's your other job? And so what do you do all day? What is your children? I'm sorry, what? You do what? What's your job? Even music educators are confused by what we do. But here we don't have that problem. We walk into the room and There's just this symbiotic understanding of what we do and the value that we have. The problem is that in our communities that we serve, people don't have that. We're usually the one or maybe 2 or 3 people in our community who understand that intrinsically. So we have to learn how to take what our values are, what makes us fun, and we have to translate that so that other people can get on board with us, that we can build support. But only if we can take the time to sort of take our values and what makes us important, what makes us relevant, put them through a nice little sieve so that we can help other people come around us. That is our job. We're the ones that have to do the work to get people to support us.
Alex, you're saying all the right things, but I have the list of what you're supposed to be saying.
I know. Yes.
Let me help you. You know, Alex and I just read a book. And this book is coming out this summer. So we're super stoked about the book. It's coming out this summer. We'll talk about that another time. But we use analogies in every chapter to kind of give the example from a different lens so you can then apply it to your space. And Alex used this great example with Shark Tank. So Alex, can you tell us about Shark Tank?
Seen the show Shark Tank? My brother and I watched it on like Christmas break when we're home and we're just like looking through the channels watching Shark Tank. So the premise of Shark Tank is that an entrepreneur with a product, like an innovative product. You know those smiley face sponges? Yeah, I don't know what they're called, but that's those. That was a Shark Tank idea. They go onto this TV show and there's this panel of 4 investors who are interested in learning about that entrepreneur's idea. And then they have to get a sales pitch, and then the sharks ask a bunch of questions, they try out the product, and then they ultimately decide if they're going to invest in that product. So Shark Tank is a really good example of how we as choir directors need to approach our communities. No, we're not selling smiley face sponges by any means, but we're selling something arguably so much more valuable. But we have to tailor how we communicate that to our panel of investors, whether that's our fundraisers, our donors, our news editors, our TV anchors, whoever we want to help come around us to tell our story, we have to tailor our ask to them. Oh, and here we go. We're going to go on. So, in Shark Tank, there are 2 things that really focus on that TV show. There's value and profit. So, when an entrepreneur walks into the room, the value that they share is what they do to talk about their product. The product is obviously the physical thing itself. We have great values as choir directors. We just talked about them. We're singing, we build community, we do all these incredible things. Our product is not something that you necessarily buy. It's shared experiences, it's changed lives, it's impactful performances, it's high quality music. Those are our products, the things that our community sees the most. And as choir directors, we typically have, especially as children's choir directors, we have one extra element, and that's our mission. Our mission, which is the goal that we hope to achieve within our community. These 3 things are really important for us to be able to define clearly, concisely, and accurately so that we can make really tailored conversations with potential supporters in our community. But it's really easy to get stuck in the language that we use. Am I going in the right direction?
You're spot on the whole point. You're perfect. That you led right to my next little sentence. You're doing great. Even without notes. I'm so proud. We must have written a book together. The whole point here is to take the educationese and the choirese that we speak so freely to each other, especially in this space right now, and tailor it, like on Shark Tank, to be really fast, hard-hitting, and speaking someone else's language. So we're going to walk you through that so it can be something you take home with you from this session. We've all talked about what makes our choirs fine. So think for a minute, and let's hear some. We've heard some of the ones before. We talked about the performances, how the parents appreciate all these things. Some of the choireses we've talked about before. Artistry, life skills, social emotional learning, varied repertoire. We go on choir tour. These are all things that I can list that off, and each of you can visualize the benefits or the reasons of why we're doing those things. But if I said artistry to Sansi Sanson, what does that mean? The hardest part of communicating your value is turning those education choireses, which we love, we don't want to get rid of them, but we want to translate them into something that's more accessible. Alex, talk us through what we're going to do next on the handout.
We're going to do a little speed dating exercise. But first, you have two things you need to do. If you're using your handout, there are two lists of three. On that first list of three, I need you to think of three things that make your choir fun. What are your choir's values? What makes your choir valuable? And I encourage you to write them down because the words that you use do matter. So write those things down now. And maybe if you're stumped, talk to your neighbor or find a friend, make a new friend. What things make your choir valuable? What makes your choir fun?
Is it in reference to the two prospects, or is it?
Nope, just anything at all.
Okay.
What makes your choir fun?
Everybody has their head down. Does that mean they're actively working?
I mean, it means that they don't like you.
Oh, it's really interesting to see from a distance.
They're wonderful. You guys are doing wonderful. Does anybody want to share one of those things that you wrote down? I know we talked about them earlier, but sometimes things change. Darren, Dave.
Diverse.
Diversity.
Laughter and a joyful environment.
Joyful environment, yes.
Musicianship.
Musicianship.
Place to learn and sing and build community.
Learn, sing, build community. Excellent. Yeah.
Responsibility.
Responsibility. We have a few of those buzzwords. Yeah.
My group it's run by the school system, it's an honors course, and so our big pitch is accessible. So we have to pay $25.
Excellent. That's fantastic. So whatever you just did, that's really great. Now I need you to look at those three things again and see if you have included words that to someone like Sandy Sanson, who has no musical bone in his body, that they would need a definition for. Artistry is a word that's hard to define outside of our search. Diversity is not a hard thing to understand, but unless it's defined in a way that promotes value, it's just a word, it's just a buzzword. Social emotional learning, let's not get started on that in this day and age. But that's a really valuable skill, but Sandy Sanson doesn't have a music education degree. He doesn't know what social emotional learning is necessary. So take those three things that you wrote and see if you can redefine them with accessible words. I will give an example. Social emotional learning. In our choir, we just break that out a little bit. It's the skills of responsibility, teamwork, confidence, empathy, and accountability. Those are the 5 ones that we use predominantly. Yeah, responsibility, teamwork, accountability, empathy, confidence.
Another great idea is the word leadership. We do a lot of leadership training in our choirs, but you need to clearly define what type of leadership training. We have students that lead sectionals. We have students that conduct pieces. We help our students learn how to facilitate conversations. Those type of really define clearly what you mean by that one word, something that can be a tangible nugget that could relate to a Sandy Sanson.
Anybody want to share one of their redefined definitions? Yes.
My first one was, I said dedicated families who want an upper level experience. And then I changed it to committed families who want their children to experience leadership and empowering situations.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody else want to share something that's redefined? Yeah.
Musical skills became building musical smarts.
Smarts. Wonderful. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Teamwork became no one sits on the bench.
It's a wonderful way to define that, yes. Anybody else? Yeah.
Musicianship for me became communication through music. What can't be done?
Yeah. Music.
That's great.
Music, what words can't do. It's really interesting to try and take your perspective as a music educator, as a choral leader, to take out that perspective and go on the other side and see what would be valuable to them. There's someone like Sandy Sanson, I know I'm off script again, but there's someone like Sandy Sanson. Sandy supports a lot of youth sports teams. And he's really big on supporting needy children, or singers of prevention. But so for us, we wanted to make sure that Sandy understood the value of the actual skills that those singers are learning. And that translates into his support for $15,000 in scholarships to make sure that children who have less financial resources have the opportunity to learn those things. Emmy, do you want me to move on?
Yes, you're great. So you guys are so awesome at participating because we wanted you to walk out such an individualized activity we're doing. But you have all these words that you want to communicate that you're proud of, your fine words. So we're going to practice accessibility, conciseness, and clarity. This is where speed dating comes into play, kind of, sort of. We're going to give you a prospective supporter. Whether that's a donor of a local newspaper, someone else in town, a Sandy Sanson, a small business owner, you won't know until we slide to that screen. I want you, once you hear the description of the sponsor, the donor, to figure out how your impactful words can be tailored to hook that individual. You ready to try the game?
One point of clarity, this is not necessarily a session about fundraising. It's about whatever you need it to be. It's about building support and coalition around your organization. So that can be fundraising, that can be recruitment, that can be storytelling through your news team, whatever it is for you.
Advocacy, visibility, whatever it is you need to grow.
And we need all of those things. But it's very rarely we're going to find that all in one person. So pick one of those that you need the most. And let's move on to our first prospect. Boom. So in our first speed dating exercise, we are going to consider someone in our community who owns a small business on your main street. Their child, they have children, they're involved. You've learned through your research of this person or your colleagues at the schools that child is involved in the school orchestra. This child is also a member of your choir, so you have like a really direct connection to this kid. And this small business owner already contributes to local sports teams. You see their logo on the back of those t-shirts. So you know that they're giving something. So they have some resources. So using your second set of values, how would you approach this person to build support for your choir? Ready, go.
All right, as you can tell, Alex is presenting live in Tucson, and I was recorded over the Zoom, not in Tucson. But this is your opportunity to stop and think. How would you communicate your value, your things, with this prospective supporter number one? Main Street small town business owner, already supports other organizations, obviously has a passion for music. Think about it. I'll give you a few seconds, and then we're going to have people from the audience tune in and say what they thought.
All right, I would love to have different souls share how they would approach this person. Whatever your thing may be. What did you discuss, Jamie?
One of the things that I thought Kristen did really well is that she kind of made a connection between the student and, hey, I noticed your child, it was so joyful to work with her the other night, or him, and I saw them walking out, skipping and singing. What did you notice? And then so there was that personal connection. And then she tied it back to, that's one of the big values of our choir, is that our children be happy and they're joyful. And that's what we're trying to do for others. And we have a drive coming up. And here, these are the scholarships we need. And would you want to be a partner in that?
Absolutely.
So she nailed it.
That's great. Great job. That's really important. Yeah, making a personal connection to this person. See, a child is something that absolutely they value. So catering sort of what your needs are and your values to what their needs and values are, making them intersect. It's a wonderful way to usher them into your circle. Anybody else? Yes.
We talked about you're obviously a team player on Main Street and such a wonderful member of this community. Would you like to be part of our team? Would you like to sponsor this project or invest in this child, or we have people that you can invest in?
Absolutely, yeah. Making a tie to their physical presence is obviously a prominent business owner in town. Translating that prominence and that spread of wealth into how their wealth and spreading their organization is really great. Yeah.
And kind of going along with that, because I kind of had the same kind of team thought, was how can we all win at this? And using the words of win because it speaks from the sports, but also we all want to win. You
Yeah.
know? And so how can we use your best attributes, and how can we bring ours and work together to create whatever it is we're trying to achieve at the time?
Yeah, I love your use of the word win. Don't ever be ashamed to use the terminology that supports their values. They hear me value sports. It's totally okay to use sports to talk about these things. We do it anyway in our classroom usually. But yeah, I'm never ashamed about that. We talk about cars, just saying sense. And
Well, I was going to say, the sports team investment, a lot of times you see your logo on the sports shirts and stuff. And if your choir's audience is like just parents, you can't go that route because their logo is only going to be seen by such a small group. So like for them, that's not the values. You have to grasp something else. So like, do you want to sponsor this thing? Do you want to, something that my mom does for her group is each sponsorship level, she lists the things that you could sponsor at that level. Oh, with this, we could do all these things.
yeah, it's an important point. If you're talking about building sponsorships, business owners who are doing sponsorships, a sponsorship is a financial contribution that results in some marketing, typically and visibility. So codifying out exactly how they're going to be visible is very, very important.
Alex, we got to move on to Prospect 2 because we only have 10 minutes left and we have 2 huge things left to do. So this one's going to have to be super speed dating. Like you only get 2 minutes to come up with a quick one on this one. Like you're in an elevator with someone. How do you catch them if you know they are Prospect 2? Ready for it? All right, Alex, go for it.
Okay, your second prospect is an investment banker in town. Run an investment banking firm. They support your local symphony and your local opera. They financially contribute. You've seen their name in the program. You've seen their logo on their stuff. And your choir rehearses in a church, and that person attends the church in which you conduct more rehearsals.
Now, hold on. Before you break out, Alex, you have to remind them about the whole every donor is so different. Like, yeah, we've solved Prospect 1. Tell them that cool little thing.
Yes, I mean, it's keeping track of my notes that I'm clearly not reading. It is important to remember that we did the work for prospect number 1, but that's just prospect number 1. Their values are different than prospect number 2. Just like no song is the same, no supporter is the same. We can't take one ask and just keep asking the same person, different people in the same way. What's the definition of insanity? Do the same thing over and over and expect a different result. We have to tailor our asks to our people. So, prospect number 1 might have intersections, but it's not going to be the same. Ready, go.
Same thing as before. Take a couple seconds. Think about your personal situation and how you could start a conversation with Prospect 2, an investment banker.
Should I serve myself into just to listen? What they say, but once you share what they, yes.
We sort of talked about like the investment banker and what that person does and talking about like a relationship with them. So saying like, here's where we are financially. We'd love to like sit down with you and go over a strategic plan or a budget, or if your office understands that, and then talking about, you give to the symphony and the opera, which are larger organizations, and our organization is smaller, and the impact of that same amount on a smaller budget could really change lives.
Yes, absolutely. They're really knowledgeable financial people. Talk to them about money.
Exactly.
It's okay to talk about money.
Get advice. Yeah.
Barbara.
So we talked about investing in the future of these former soon to be symphony and opera. Yeah, there's a lot to just take on to those symphony and opera people started as 8-year-olds in my choir.
Yeah. We talk a lot about, with all of our donors, and especially our larger ones, we talk about the investment a lot. We use that word. Every donation, no matter how big or how small, is an investment in these singers. And that's people like feeling like their money is clearly going towards something that they can see a measurable difference. Yeah.
And me and Jana were discussing the opportunity given them to be part of the program and introducing music or in the breaks and choirs of switching part of that transition to actually some speaking to present, especially if they haven't been to your concerts before, but they have presence in those other organizations like you mentioned.
Yeah. A lot of times, a lot of organizations that have some donors introduce. Yeah, that's wonderful.
The other thing that he said was that
investment in a music program takes a long time, like investments, like financial investments. The earlier you start, the more value you get in the end.
Ah, yes, talking about that growth trajectory. It's a great way to develop long-term support. That's excellent. Yes, yes.
If you actually know this person's religious thoughts, you could say, Jesus wants you to do this.
Oh my goodness. You know, I can name a few people in my community where that strategy would work. Karen, I told you had to talk and say your thing.
Oh, okay. So, I love the dating concept, and I think the reason I married the woman that I married is the dates were always about her, and we've had a very long relationship since then. So when you're sitting there and talking to these folks, one is you need to do your research before you sit down with them. Don't hesitate to look at the tax records for the value of their home, so you know how much to ask. You may ask too much, you may ask too little. But doing the research before that date, doing it during a meal with somebody, that's why I have this thing. I eat a lot with donors. And then when they're tired of you asking about them, then they will start to ask about you. And then when you are telling them about you, I generally don't ever make an ask. They say, how can I help? And then I've done my research and I can say, how about a $10,000 gift? Help with this thing. So that's kind of
doing your research is really important.
Huge, but make sure it's about that.
Yes, doing your research ahead of time, which is what we sort of did. Yeah. What else?
I also wanted to mention, just because this has worked so well for us in the last year and a half or so, is that you have to start cultivating the relationship well before there's ever any money involved. You know, like sharing. What I started doing is just sharing quarterly with all the people. I have like a perspective list, people who are my game changers, and just, hey, I just want to share these updates. I hope you're well. Remember, and I start to write down like any personal notes about them, and I have to write them down because my memory is crap. So, you know, just like remembering things about them, telling them, just shooting you a few quick updates about the chorus, you know, come to this concert, come check out the kids at rehearsal. And I found that doing that for an entire year really increased our numbers, like in different ways, individual donations, access to foundations, and that kind of thing.
Yeah. We have a few minutes left. Oh, Margaret, do you want to have one last?
Oh, and also to tap onto that, once you get money from donors, it's really important to continue to foster that relationship and keep them in the loop so that they can continue to give, or if things change or whatever. They really sometimes they give you that $10,000 and then they don't hear from you anymore. That's like terrible. So however you can find ways to keep them included and updated is really important.
Save that one for later. Good point. Now what, Emmy?
So we noticed that you guys have great feedback. I love how you're giving ideas and everyone's like jotting things down. I can see pencils moving and head nodding. So that's about all I got from my screen. But you guys look super engaged. We noticed that these people had no musical bones in our body, but you conquered that. You were able to translate what you feel is fine into verbalizing what they need to hear. So it's about taking these skills that we have and making it intentional, which we're great at that. So there are some action items that we want to give to you for how you can take this speed dating example and apply it to your community. Because we all know that when you go home from one of these conferences, it's about, okay, what am I actually going to do now? So here are your action steps. You're going to do action step 1 and 2 right now. So when you get back to your space of work on Monday or Tuesday or whenever, you can go on to step 3. So let me give you a quick example. My choir in Savannah is named Rise, and it's an LLC, but we've just started a non-for-profit branch called Rise Outreach to help support the whole system. So we started by looking at what are the words that define what we do, and we sat down as a board and did that exact same activity you have done up to this point. What makes us fine? Why would someone want to be a part of it? How do we define what it is that we do? And then we looked around the city and said, okay, Where do we want to reach out to people? And who in those different areas do we want to reach out to? We then assigned areas and people to different people on the board, and they are actively doing the research, figuring out what motivates them, and setting up the opportunities to converse with them or to start to build that relationship. So these are your action items for getting the prospects in front of you, in addition to the awesome ideas that you've already had. So, Alex, tell them the story about your alumni.
Yeah, so in our world, in the Pensacola Children's Course, one of our untapped sources of support, potential support, are our alumni. We have 32 years of alumni who largely are disengaged. We didn't do a lot of, my predecessors didn't do an extensive tracking of them, and I knew, well, not anymore, after 6 years, and I have this little level of alumni, but I've got 26 years of alumni who also are part of the program, who had valuable experiences and they're serving as leaders where? I don't even know where they are because they're all over the country. So identifying where they are and learning about their experience can turn into great support and growth for our organization. One is sitting in this room because he works for us now as our community program director. So there's an untapped source of potential for us in that regard. So that's just one example, like Emmy's. Someone who's starting out this new thing. We've been around for decades, and we still have to do this one.
So for 2 minutes, I think we have 5 minutes left since I obviously had the time wrong earlier. We have a few minutes left. We want you to go ahead and do number 1 and number 2. Identify where are the prospects and who in that category of prospects do you need, and kind of start catering your own speed dating activity right then and there. You can use your friend beside you if you want to, but jot some ideas down. Who are some people that you want to go home and use these new skills of translating what we do to talk about? Alex, do you want to give clearer directions and countdown time?
I'd like you to be very specific. Now, there are these people in our community who have money. There are these people in our community who would support us. I want you to write physical names down. Sandy Sansky would be a name that I could write down if I didn't already have them in our family. So think about a few of those in 60 seconds. It's not going to take you that long to think of those. You already know who they are, most likely. So, your homework, when you get home, when you have time this week, is to take this discussion that we've had, take some of these skills that we've promoted, and see how you might be able to distill your value, your organizational value, and translate that into support for someone specifically in your community. This is a really hard concept to teach in a professional development setting because we can't give you the answers for you. Because everybody's community is so unique. No song is the same, said earlier. Every single person is unique. So it's really hard to compare one another. Like, what do you do? What do you do? How do you do it? It's very individualized to you. We can get ideas from one another, but ultimately taking something that's working here and putting it here isn't necessarily going to work. We have to do the research on our people. We have to find them and talk about our values to them. Very important, very important. I'm going to do a small shameless plug, actually. Emmy and I have completed a book about the administration of running a choir. And we use our unique experiences, Emmy as the founder of an organization that is growing, and my experience is taking over a very well-established organization and moving it in a different direction. We take the experiences of so many of these people in this room that have taught us over the years. We just tried to translate them into some more biteable, actionable text, because there are many books on fundraising, but not for choir directors. There are many books on recruitment, but not necessarily for choir directors. There are very many books on finance, but translating that to an artistic world can be very confusing. So we're trying to distill that for choral leaders like you. That book is coming out through GIA Publications in June. I can't share the title, it's changed a million times. I'm not even sure where we are. And then the other thing, which Brian Cliswell is in the back with Onomato Events and Kaleidoscope Adventures, we are leading a festival in Myrtle Beach in 2023 that has a professional development component. So Emmy and I will be working with singers. One of us will be working with singers while the other is doing professional development for participating teachers on these administrative topics. So Brian has these things in his hand. Look at him, he's waving. And we would hope you would join us in that. Emmy, final thoughts?
I hope that you know that you really matter and you have amazing skills and you can do hard things. You can turn your choir into a huge budget choir like Darren's in Jacksonville, or You can turn your choir into whatever it needs to be in your community because you have those skills and you know how to communicate, and now you just have a couple more resources in your back pocket to get started. There you have it. Steps and tips for how you can take what you already do that is so fine and wonderful and learn how to make it accessible and concise and clear for all different kinds of donors. Every choir is different. Every song's different. Every supporter is going to support for different reasons. Let's take the wonderful things that we're doing and the skills we have as educators, and let's practice translating that so that we can communicate that value outside of our choral bubble. I can't wait to hear what you think about this one. Remember, you can jump over to patreon.com/musicedmatters and join the conversation. We have live Zoom hangouts once a month, and we talk about stuff like this. How are you communicating your value? I'd love to see you over there. Thank you so much for listening. In case no one has told you today, you matter. We all know that music matters, especially communicating our value to those outside of our musical bubbles. And I'll see you next time on the Music Ed Matters podcast.